But I'm going to bring in Lana now. Lana just sent me a rant because a lot of people are sending me stuff on the Cafe Locked Out inbox. I'm getting a lot, but this really, really moved me. And I asked her if she'd like to come on, and she said yes. And here she is. So, Australia, get ready because this is going to rock the boat. Hello, Lana.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm
Hi.
good. I'm good. Well, considering everything, I'm as good as can be. Now, can we let's introduce? So, just introduce yourself and what you do and why you feel like you need to say something.
Okay, so I'm Lana, and I have been a social worker for the last 12 months. And I was working with the homeless community of Melbourne. I started my first 6 months um, as a social worker supporting the rough sleepers of Melbourne while they were moved off the streets and into hotels
Mm.
due to COVID outbreaks. So that's where I started um, with the organisation I work for. Was on this.
Before you go on, can you just tell me how long does it take to become a social worker?
Okay, so I actually started last year as a travel agent.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and was stood down as a travel agent in, I think it was April, May last year. But I had a certificate in community services that I had completed about 3 years earlier. And I had been volunteering in my local community during that time, but I couldn't break into the sector. Um, because I didn't have experience. But then COVID hit and it kind of opened a lot of doors for the sector
mm-hmm,
because Melbourne were desperate for support
uh-huh.
and there was a lot going on. So I was lucky enough to get into the industry that way. I was actually hired through a Working for Vic initiative to help people who had been stood down get back into the workforce. So that's how
That's
I
good.
got there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what was it like? Was it confronting to jump right in and get the rough sleepers into hotels and stuff?
Yeah, so when I joined, the majority of the homeless community had already been placed into the hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And I started this role and walked into the hotels and thought, what a shit show this is.
But
Oh.
was
Like,
it voluntary or was it mandatory for them to get out of the streets?
well, with the COVID outbreak, they needed to get them off the streets. So I'm not sure exactly how voluntary or mandatory it was at that time because I hadn't joined the organisation then.
Mm.
Um, but what I walked into was
Boring.
these hotels that were originally four-star hotels. I'm talking Oaks, Ridges, Holiday Inns, hotel managers walking out of their jobs. And the problem I found was they put a lot of people who are quite vulnerable in the community with a lot of issues, people battling addictions, drug addicts in there, women who are victim survivors, a whole mix of people into a hotel. And it was just an absolute disaster. We were, there was police being called out to these places, stabbings being occurred. I had women who I was working with who were bunking together in their rooms because they're suffering harassment and they're worried about being sexually assaulted by their neighbor who is saying things to them and trying to they just felt unsafe. And it was a real mess. It was a real mess. TVs in swimming pools, um,
Wow.
rooms completely destroyed, and I just felt like it wasn't managed safely. I had a knife pulled out on me, turned to my employer to discuss it. They told me there was a line I could call to speak to a counsellor, but I was sent to the same building with the same client the next week. And, things things just it was a mess, and I didn't feel safe at work. I spent 6 months there, and, I suffered with burnout. I realized I can't do this full time anymore. I need to go to part-time, and I'm hearing it a lot in this industry that, support workers, case managers, they're burnt out. And,
I've heard
if
that
there's
too.
one good if there's one good thing that did come out of the hotels was that Dan Andrews put them in, but what was he gonna do with them? Was he just gonna throw them out when all these lockdowns were over? So he did have to throw in a heap of money and try and sort things, get people out of hotels and into homes. But, it took a pandemic for him to do something.
Yeah, but I sort of, I have to admit, I think it was a great idea when the pandemic started to get them off the streets. Because years ago, when I was a tram driver, the streets of Melbourne were just wall to wall mattresses with people just sleeping everywhere. Every shop entrance had someone. I mean, the homeless situation was getting out of hand. So I guess
Yeah.
the hotels were empty. I can see that. That that from a humanitarian point of view, getting them into hotels makes a lot of sense. But I guess it takes a lot of work to police it when you're trying to police a pandemic as well. So I can understand that, especially when you've got the quarantine mess going on as well. But
Yeah.
what you think would have made it work more efficiently? What do you think would have the answer been? Could you know, or is it just too crazy?
Well, I can only go by what I had seen, and I had a lot of people that I was working with, you know, begging me to help them with things like rehab, or, get them into programs to really fix their lives and try and build up and, get out of this situation they're in. But you try and get them into rehab, and there's a year waiting list for rehab, and they're in hotels with drug dealers who are dealing in front of us, and there's just nothing that I could do about it. And
Mm.
all I could tell them was, "Oh, you're on a waiting list." Like, this whole time I've worked in this role, it's been waiting lists. How do you tell a woman who's at home, scared that she's going to be hurt or could die from her partner, but there's a 2-week waiting list for a risk assessment to assess the risk she's in?
And is that only because of it, COVID was around, or was that always been the case? Because I heard it's always been
It, it has
a very
always
difficult sector.
Yeah, it has always been the case, but now you're getting people to isolate and spend more time in the home and living in this situation. So it's only, of course, it's going to get worse. And, I've seen that in the second half of my 12 months. I was working with the community who are living in social housing and trying to support them with keeping their tenancies, people who are being evicted. And, my role changed in that as well. I was assisting people keeping tenancies, and now I'm referring people to mental health services, and the waiting lists are just crazy.
Oh, for mental health, yeah, I'd say they
Yeah,
would
for
be.
mental health and
Yeah,
and for all, yeah, it's
yeah. I think though, at the moment, I mean, we're in extraordinary times. I mean, we are. There's we really are. There's a lot of distrust for the government, and there's a lot of love for the government too. There's a lot of people very fond of what's going on. Uh, but it's a very very difficult situation. I mean, if you were made homeless now because of an abusive relationship, and either way, even if you're the bloke that had to move out, or the partner, it's there's very little very few places to go. There's very few rentals. Um, it's a very difficult world at the moment. Um, do you think it would have helped more if, say, I'm just making a suggestion, if the hotels had been segregated, like women living in the women hotels, hotels just for the women? Do you think that would have helped?
absolutely, absolutely. And look, I also seen a lot of clients moving from different hotels. So there was a lot of instability in that housing as well. Some there were a few that had moved 11 hotels. And then
Wow.
once you hit a point, and it started with 4-star hotels, but once you hit that point of getting kicked out, they're sending them into accommodation that I can't even believe they're funding, because the condition of the accommodation, it was just disgusting.
And
It's
are there a lot of these women? Do they have children as well? I mean, is there children
um,
in this system, or is it mainly adults?
mainly adults.
Mm-hmm.
Some women were mothers, but didn't. The women I worked with didn't have their children in their custody.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I didn't deal with any children
Yeah. And
in
there's,
the.
yeah, okay. So it's actually good to hear from that sector, because I've heard nothing at all. I have actually wondered how the homeless were doing, because they've had nothing. So they're really, I mean, their lives have always been very, very tough, but now they're
Yeah.
just super tough,
Yes,
you
well,
know?
in the 6 months that, I had worked on the hotels program, I was able to, see a gentleman who had been 20 years on the streets, but he spent 15 years on the waiting list for housing, and I think 8 of them were a priority, and th there's definitely problems here. That they are being addressed now, because I feel like the government don't have a choice.
Mm.
But, I was very concerned that it wasn't dealt with right, and we were putting people in situations where, you're putting crime in their faces, and, I spent a lot of my role trying to keep people out of prison, and, moving them from different hotels. It was just a mess.
Yeah. And so what happened with you now? So did they move you to another department after the hotels?
Yeah, so after the hotels, I moved to another program part-time,
Mm-hmm.
and, I started there in May, and I've been assisting, my clients who live in social housing with lockdowns. I've been
What's
able to work.
social housing? Can you explain what social
It's
housing is?
commission housing, so all,
Okay.
people in commission housing. So whenever their tenancy becomes at risk, or they can self-refer, if they need assistance. So, I can assist them if they're, needing to go to VCAT, or if they have no furniture in their home, and I assist, various things to do with their housing. And, I've actually been working remotely, since this last lockdown that we've had. I've not needed to really go into the office much. There was a couple of times I needed to print, which I sorted a printer out. But from the 15th of, October, I was stood down from my role, and I can no longer assist my clients. And that really disappointed me, because I've spent 12 months, a good 6 months on the front line, where it didn't matter what sort of vaccination status I held, or, there was no care in the world for my safety. And I was just doing what I had to do. And, a lot of it I did from the heart. I've had a lived experience of homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
So I never treated any individual as a name or a number or anything like that. They were human beings. And what I did from my heart. And I felt like I work for an organization that's all about, love and caring and the word of God and Jesus. And when it came to standing me down, that went out the window. Um, I could have easily be doing my job this week, no different to last week.
So
But,
you've been stood down simply because you decided you didn't want the vaccination. So you've been a
yes,
frontline homeless support worker in a very, very difficult field, in a job that most people wouldn't want to do, a job that's really necessary to be done well,
yes,
and they've stood you down because you're not vaccinated.
yeah,
And of course, the organization will be fined. but the organization, we're a Christian-based society. We really are. I mean, it's fundamentally underneath. There are other religions, but predominantly we're Christian-based, and predominantly that is based on the word of Jesus. And no matter where you are, no matter how much where you stand, everybody knows that the last thing Jesus would do is ostracize anybody. Just
And
whether you believe in him or not, just the myth of the man is a man that hugged lepers and cured people. He just wouldn't ostracize. So here, our entire community is going against our fundamental principles. We just had a guy on from Portugal. Portugal, they've reached their vaccination targets, but you can work whether you're vaccinated or not. That hasn't affected their job things at all. He's just come on and told us that. So in Portugal, they're doing things differently. How do you feel now? Because I can see you have the normal current Melbourne face of the people. There's two lots. There's the people who are sitting at home who are getting a big pay packet, can do their work in their pajamas, and they're fine. That nothing's bothering them. They're actually wondering what everyone's complaining about. But then there's the rest of us who are having everything stripped away and basically going through carnage. And you have that natural expression. If I could give you a hug, I would, because you look terrible. You do. Sorry.
Thank you. Do you know, I'm really.
I don't mean that in a bad way, but I can see you got like if your face was a heart, it's breaking. Yeah. How are you coping? How are you coping with what's happened?
I think I'm trying to process it all. I'm really sad. And you mentioned something just then, Michael. You're like, the organization will be fine. They'll cope. Well, actually, the first thing that I asked my manager when she called me to do the right thing and speak to me before I had a stand down notice emailed to me was I asked about handing my clients over because I wanted to hand them over properly. They mentioned I was stood down from Monday. I asked if I could, finalize some things over the weekend. I didn't even want to be paid for it because I know how big our waiting list is. I joined in May and we had people waiting from 2020 for assistance. It only got worse through the lockdowns. So our waiting lists are blowing out. We're already understaffed in my team, and I'm actually worried about what sort of assistance we are going to be providing these clients who are in real need. Some of them have been handed notices to vacate. If they're not looked after properly, they're back on the streets. Like it does worry me, but overall, I'm really sad. I'm sad for our community as a whole, the whole of Melbourne. I feel like we have someone who is standing in a press conference pushing so much hate amongst people that, I'm sure I've lost plenty of friends. I was attacked online for putting up a frame to say I trust my immune system, and got attacked by a friend to say you don't deserve to be able to go to hospital if something happens to you or have Medicare. This is what people are saying. This is what people are doing. I'm getting messages about hate against different communities, religious communities. Oh, the hospitals are filled with certain people. No. I also get people from that same faith telling me they've lost family members post-vaccine and they can't attend funerals. It's a mess, and it scares the hell out of me. I don't know
what's missing is what you are. There's an empathy missing.
Yeah.
There's a decent empathy missing that just seems to have gone. Yeah. So there's no looking at your case from a normal position. Okay, this woman doesn't want to get vaccinated. Maybe we could test her. We got these rapid antigen tests. We could just test her, respect her right not to take the vaccine, and leave her doing her vital job with the homeless and trying to fix that mess. No, you're just cast out.
No, I honestly don't even need to be at my place of work to do my job.
So you could do a lot of it from home, just working
All
from home. So you could do all of it from home.
Are they
Just-
rolling the mandatory vaccination on the homeless too?
Well, this is another thing that didn't quite sit right with me, was that they were turning places where the homeless community could go to for meals into vaccination hubs, which
Oh my
what worries me is that if people aren't comfortable and not wanting the vaccine, they may not go to these places for food. So are people going hungry now? Because I know they're pushing it onto me. They were trying to push it onto me to push it onto my clients. No way am I going to recommend anything that's someone's choice, and that's about their medical, I don't know their medical history. I'm not going to push a vaccine onto anyone. But yeah, that worries me. That worried me about the health.
I've heard they do the same thing in Thailand.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that are going hungry, but you will come and get your food only if you are vaxxed.
Yeah.
So that's another coercion in another way. I mean, here we are all talking to each other that we're losing our jobs, but there are other ways and other communities that are going coerced in different ways. It's just completely crazy.
Can I ask, Lana, and you don't have to tell me if you're not comfortable telling me, you have a family? You have kids or anything?
Yeah, I do. I've got two. I'm a mum of three. I've got two little ones living with me, and it's been tough. It's been really tough. I don't know where to.
Now it's going to get a lot tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to sit back and go, all right, because we don't know what's happening. You got Dan up there today going, don't even think of having a life before the Grand Prix. Kidding me? Like, I don't know. Like, what's the future? I don't know. What I do know is I'm a strong woman and I have been at rock bottom. So he can't scare me. And I know what happens at rock bottom. And there's only one way to go from the bottom, and that's up. So he can try all he wants to break me, but it's not going to happen.
Well, it's good to hear.
I just can't believe it, to be honest. But you know what? It is what it is. It is a shit show. It is.
It is a shit show.
And if I can say one thing to anyone listening out there, don't turn on the people in your community, because once you say things and once you do things, you can be forgiven with time, but you can't turn back on your actions. And there are so many people suffering right now, and people need people right now. We need human kindness. We need a heart. Don't turn on people, and don't turn on one another. We need love more than anything right now. Love and a bit of hope, but we need to get this community together and just love one another.
We need a leader who brings us together. That's what we need. We need a leader that says we're the one people. They're like the songs that we used to sing, and we're not two people. And someone who is noble enough and empathetic enough to do that, and not someone who seems to be celebrating on the fact that he's locking people out just because they're exercising their freedom to what goes into their bodies. I don't have any answers for you, Lana, except on Thursday. Where'd you live? I'm in Coburg. Where'd you live?
I'm in Hoppers Crossing.
Hoppers. Well, I think that we're going to start getting some parties together where people can come together. I think it's, and I think everyone can be welcome in parks and stuff up to the 15. I'm recommending that people do that. Go out, get in your groups, have parties, get back together, talk, look at each other's faces, eat, drink, support each other, find out what each other needs, and come together like that and support and start building networks to support each other. I've heard other people saying that. I think that's the way we do it. And we show the community, or we show our leaders that are trying to break us apart, that we don't want to be broken apart. We're not interested in broken apart. We want Australians. We want to be together, and we're going to be together. And, you know, we'll get through this as one people. It's very, very tough now. But I think there's a lot of support out there. And we've just got to bring out the best in us.
Absolutely.
Because our leaders aren't bringing it out, so we've got to bring it out ourselves. Because this is our city, this is our state, this is our country. These leaders are temporary, you know. This is our
They are not representing us at all. No. So we just need to see it as a whole.
Yeah.
It's just, it can't be just them deciding for all of us.
No.
They should be guiding us into how to live together, but it's not happening like that. Because they think they know best for all of us, and it just doesn't work like that.
Even the way they're selling freedom, the freedom isn't theirs to give to us. It's not a gift. It's not a status. It's our right. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So I know times are really, really hard, but we've got to get through this. We've got to get through this together. So what you said, Lana, is beautiful. Do you have anything else you want to say before we say goodnight?
Just a shout out to all the social workers doing an amazing job out there. You're amazing humans, and we're all doing our best. And I think they're a bit forgotten, but I think they really are heroes too, and should be up there. They are
heroes.
Yeah,
they are heroes.
Yeah,
they are.
And we just got to keep strong and build those communities and share our stories. I think sharing our stories is so important. People feel gagged. I know I sometimes hold back on sharing things and wonder how I'm, going to be judged and things, but I think we need to just share our stories.
This is why it's, I'm going to say something that I've been wanting to say for a while, and I have a little... This is why we really have to thank Cafe Locked Out, because it's a platform that wasn't there before, and the way that we can just come and talk and express ourselves and bring all these people together that are from different places, different backgrounds and everything, but have all this in common, that they don't understand what's happening and that it's not okay. Just to express it is something. So of course, Michael is the one who's made that possible. So I wanted to personally thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Amazing. You're doing amazing work.
I think a lot of people can thank you. I've been seeing it also in a lot of the comments and everything like that, but I think it needed to be said.
Well, we're a long way from home yet, Lana and Lena. We're a long way from home. We're just on the right side of history. But Lana, I wish you the best. Hopefully we meet up. We've got contacts now, so let's stay in touch. And let's maybe build a new network, and who knows what's going to happen in the future. But yeah, I really wish you best of luck to you and your kids. I hope you sleep well tonight and just think we'll get through this. Like you say, you've rock bottom.
Positive thinking.
Positive thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We remember, and I know it sounds really cliched, but we're born without the ability to hate. That's what we do, We scream and shit and feed, but we loved, and hopefully someone loves us back. We have to be taught to hate, and that's what we've been taught to do now as a community. We have a leader that's teaching us to hate. So,
but our resistance is our power.
Yeah, just fail the exam.
We have to be together and resist all this, and we will see the end. There is always after. But it's just very, very tough at the beginning. But because we can share it together and talk about it and express our feelings in it, it makes it a little bit stronger.
Yes, it sure
does. Keep on
does.
smiling.
Yes, I'll keep smiling.
Really take care, Lana.
Yes.
Really take care.
Thank
My heart
you.
goes out to you, okay? And
Thank you.
And I think everyone will be sending you lots of messages. If there are any trolls, let me know. We'll ban them. We don't need
Okay.
Let's get rid of them. I've got no videos to end tonight. we'll just end with this and say good night. Good night, Australia. See ya.
Good night.
Good night.